Everyone, thank you for coming. I stand here I was going to write things down, but I am just very passionate about this subject, so it's better if I just speak from the heart. I'm a woman in recovery, but I also have an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old daughter, and I have seen what the drugs out there today, the fentanyl, for example, that's out there is killing kids, and we're trying to get the message out just to let people know the dangers that exist, and just to help save some lives. I want to thank Florida Parish Services for they have donated medical safes and Narcan for us. It's just one per person, but the medical safes for, I'd say, if the adults have to take a medicine and they don't want their children to be able to get to it, you have those. And the Narcan, actually at the end I will show y'all kind of how to give it to someone if they have an opioid overdose. You can give it to them and then we'll bring them back to life. You still need to call an ambulance. It will give you like 5 or 10 minutes, but it is a life-saving drug. And as a mother, both of my daughters carry it in their car. And unfortunately, this is the world we live in, and I hate to bring attention to it, but it's something that I really am passionate about bringing attention to. Tonight we have, I also work for Long Branch, but Sam is kind of my service work, and I'm very passionate about it. Tonight we have Cole, who has been sober almost 2 years, and he is a Long Branch alumni. We have Tanya Stewart, who is a friend of mine, who has an adolescent treatment center called the Maples in Baton Rouge for girls. And then we have Mr. Dan, who is from the Netflix show The Pharmacist, but also a personal friend who has worked now for 20 years to get the word out. We really appreciate him being here tonight. And we have Holland Counts, who is actually our Director of Business at Long Branch. He's going to tell you a little bit about Long Branch Treatment Center and just about treatment in general. He's also in recovery. And then Lieutenant Governor Nungesser surprised us tonight, and he's going to introduce Dan for me and tell you a little bit more about Dan. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for having a passion for this and helping out. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let me tell you. What? Can't hear it? Okay. Thank all of you for being here tonight. So many great people for such a great cause. And I actually flew back in a few minutes ago from Mississippi testifying over there. But I wanted to be here tonight. And I will be at any events that you need me at, whether it's changing legislation or helping raise funds. I'm also over the Seafood Promotion Board, so for your nonprofits, we can provide good, free Louisiana seafood for any fundraising events. I think just about everybody here tonight has my cell number. We never tell anyone no that calls my office. We try to find help for anybody, whatever the problem is. So I wanted to come here. When I saw the special Netflix, I reached out to Dan a little over a year ago. Yes. And his love and passion for making a difference. He is truly a great Louisiana ambassador, as many of you are. This man lost his son 22 years ago, and a drug-related murder. And he wasn't getting justice. And on his drive, determination, and passion to solve his son's murder, actually investigated himself and got the killer off the street. And now his mission to educate parents, students, and prevent these tragedies to others has been second to none. And I know many of you speaking to you tonight have that same passion. The Netflix has been viewed by over 100 million people. So just that small effort on your part has blossomed as so many people has to really bring attention and change. But we've got a long way to go. He's spoken to thousands of people in groups all over, but he's most passionate about speaking to the kids and reaching those kids, as I am. So it is my honor to welcome a good friend and an ambassador to Louisiana, Dan Stewart.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate that. Thank you, Linda. Thank the SAM ministry here and Louis Bauer, also the SAM ministry, but the one at Mary Queen of Peace. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you people here. Billy has been a big supporter of mine, and it never has to have, nice to have friends in high places at times, okay? You know, one of the things that me and Billy had discussed in the past was there's some settlement money coming from the opioid litigation. We just recently settled some of it. And me and Billy discussed that we wanted to make sure that that money went to where it was supposed to go and not go to potholes, okay? And so I got together with Billy and some attorneys and eventually with the Attorney General. And, you know, this is like a nonpartisan issue. Everybody wants to pull together. But we made doggone sure, okay, that this money is going to go for recovery and treatment. Again, some of my story has been told, but my story has been told to 100 million viewers on Netflix. And what I want to say is, everybody looks at our family and the struggle that we had, but please understand that we represent the million mothers that have lost kids since my son died in 1999, okay? And there's a scene in the show, and I say scene, it's a soundbite that I happen to accidentally record, and it's my wife's here today, Annie, and she's crying in the background. I don't think I was supposed to record that. Everybody thinks I was this great recording guy that always knew what he was doing. Half the time I ran out of tape, half the time I was recording things I wasn't supposed to record, and not recording what I was supposed to record, but anyway, I accidentally got some pertinent stuff. But anyway, I caught her yelling out, "My God, why did you take my baby?" And it's a guttural call that you hear from a mother that just lost a child, okay? And again, what I want y'all to realize, though, is this. I don't know if you want to call it fortune or fate or whatever it was, but I was able to capture that. Now, the producers asked me, since it was so personal, they said, "Do you want to play that on the show?" And I said, "Absolutely." Because there are a million families out there that if you had a recorder in their home after they lost their kid, you would hear the same kind of cry as 100 million mothers that have lost their kids. So, to put that in perspective too, last year alone, we lost 93,000, and that's about what it takes to fill Tiger Stadium. And it's sad, but in this particular case, it's really Death Valley. And it's Death Valley for our kids that we've lost. Now, back to my story in a sense, stigma. You know, the cops back then really had a stigma, you know. They treated my son, who was a drug user, okay, and I guess he had an addiction, we didn't know it, okay. But he wasn't really a criminal in a traditional sense, okay. He had done no one anything harm. Yet they seemed to treat my son as a criminal, even maybe just equal to as they did the murder. So I learned early on that they really wasn't serious about solving my son's murder. And this was a kid that died with a snapshot, the worst moment of his life, and we've all had bad moments, and just imagine if you happen to die at that moment in that fashion. So I said, no, we're going to get justice for this kid. Not only that, there's a killer on the street. This isn't just a drug user, okay? There's a person that killed somebody on the street, and he may kill again. Okay? So I made a bargain with God. At that time, you're praying, and you're doing everything you can do, and out of desperation, I made a bargain with God, and I said, look, God, I knew the odds were against me. I knew it was dangerous what I was going to do. I prayed to God, and I said, please, God, if you will help me get my son's killer off the street and no innocents get hurt, I will go on a mission for you. Okay. Well, this is the mission, okay? Because I did have the good fortune, it's a big story, but I eventually was able to find a witness. She was a hero. She came forward and was able to get some measure of justice. Well, there's another interesting thing that happened too. I can't give you the whole background on this, so I'll have to speed it up a little bit, but my son had expressed to me just maybe a week before his death that he was depressed. Actually, I kind of suspected he might be doing drugs. I'm not thinking crack or some serious drug. I'm thinking marijuana, okay? And, parents are kind of like the last one to know, okay? But anyway, he said, no, I'm not doing drugs, Dad, but I'm depressed. And so, I kind of had some discussions with him, and I offered to try to help him, and kind of coached him a little bit, and tried to set his straight, because he said he was frustrated with his life. He didn't know what he wanted to be, wasn't doing as good in school as he thought he should be doing, such. So we had this heart-to-heart talk, and it's a shame to say it in hindsight now, because he eventually would die within about a week, okay? But it seemed to perk him up a little bit, okay? He did some things in that last week that he hadn't really been doing. And I had actually talked to him about maybe changing. He wanted to be an architect, which was shooting kind of high for him, okay? He was good in literature and reading and stuff like that, but not so good in math. But he could draw. And I said, well, look, so why don't you just be a draftsman, and maybe later on you can progress. And he said, yeah, Dad. He comes to me a couple of days later now, which is just a few days before his death, and he says, Dad, I'm going to take your word on that. I feel pretty good. I'm going to be a draftsman. But Dad, I like to write. I write poetry and short stories, and we knew some of that, but we'd find out more about that later after he passed. Okay? And he said, so I'm going to do some writing. Probably can't make a living out of it, but I'm going to do some writing. There's one other thing I'd like to do. He said, Dad, I'd like to discourage kids from doing drugs. And at the time, I kind of said, well, this kid finally gets it. Because I had many discussions with him about not doing drugs, okay? And especially not progressing past marijuana and being a gateway to more serious drugs, okay? And he would kind of debate with me that there was nothing wrong with marijuana and something and whatnot, okay? Now, I still didn't have an idea that he went beyond that, okay? But, it disarmed me, which maybe, I don't know whether I was still caught him or not, but it disarmed me. But now I know the struggle he had, okay? He saw it happen when his dad said it might happen. Okay? It's kind of hard to your dad say, Dad, you're right. Okay? I'm stuck. Okay? So any event, he went out that fateful night. He had called some friends. He tried to not go that night. He had talked to friends about him having a craving. He didn't want to go. All right? And they said, well, call us up and we'll go out and do something. And 5 minutes after he left that house that night before he was shot just a couple hours later, a friend called. And that friend was trying to reach him to help him. So there's a lot about that story, but I want to iterate to that the stigma associated with this, kept the cops from doing their jobs. It keeps people from getting into recovery, and it's not a moral failing. There are plenty excellent, great people. I heard a story tonight about a gentleman that spoke to me that his wife had a baby, and they gave her a Vicodin by drip, I believe it was, okay? And it wound up getting hooked, and she never had a drug problem before. And a lot of people do that through prescriptions, okay? So it's not a moral failing, it's a disease. Now, trying drugs is a poor choice, and a very risky one at that. Murder is a moral failing and a serious crime. Danny deserved justice. I investigated. Continuing with the story, I have since then, between Danny saying, I want to discourage kids from doing drugs, and between the bargain with God, I have for 22 years tried to fulfill that mission of trying to discourage kids from doing drugs. And that's what I'm doing here tonight. We don't have a lot of kids here, but we have people that have children, we have people that have grandchildren, and these messages have to be passed along, okay? Now, I have spoken in high places before thousands of people around the country and around the world, where usually drug czars and even presidents have spoken. But none of those talks is more important than my message in this audience tonight. Unlike the past, when trying drugs could lead to bad things, today deception is being used. And one pill, one try, can kill. I shared this message at St. Bernard Middle School this past May, and none of the students and only a few of the faculty were aware of this. I also shared it at St. Felton in Metairie Town Hall just weeks ago. At that time, some Catholic high school moms came up and told me they had lost children this way to fake prescription pills. I handed out on your chairs a sheet that says the Pharmacists People's Association, and there's the warning that I read to the kids at those schools. I'm going to read it right now, okay? And it goes this way. Parents and students, Please be alert and aware that there are fake prescription pills such as Xanax, Percocet, and Adderall on the street and available through social media. These fake pills contain deadly amounts of the very potent opioid called fentanyl. One pill can kill. This fentanyl also can release ecstasy, marijuana, methamphetamine, almost any drug. Never take anything unless it is prescribed by a doctor and gotten from a pharmacy. In the past, experimenting with these things was wrong, but not usually deadly. Now this illicit fentanyl is in almost anything, not from a pharmacy, and it's killing students. It's like Russian roulette, literally. Okay. Students, stay away from drugs and alcohol. Your brains are still developing, and even if they are not immediately deadly, they can damage your brain. Also, watch out for your friends who might be experimenting. Care, don't cover. Report any using or dealing anonymously if necessary to parents and or teachers. Sadly, when I delivered this message to St. Bernard Middle School, not far from where I talked, just 2 weeks later, a Beltray senior died by taking a half of a Percocet. I had a little guilt about that. I was kind of hoping to get that somewhere in schools. Pills are common now. This is what we got to understand, you know. A lot of people don't even blame these kids for trying a pill, okay? But they're very common now. Dad takes Percocet, but he has a root canal. Our mom takes a Xanax, such. If they take it as prescribed, they can have some benefit, and they don't kill, okay? So these kids see this. To these young generation now, pills, the pharmaceutical industry's taught us this. They've advertised us this, okay? They got us involved in these pills. And now these kids think, in my generation, it was like if I stuck like Jack Daniels and put Jack Daniels in Coke, okay? Well, now them taking a pill like a Xanax is fine. You know, it's not that big of a deal. And you know what? It just might not be that big of a deal if it was really a Xanax or if it was really a Percocet. But now there are devious people out there that are lacing these pills or faking these pills. They look like tablets, and one pill can literally kill. Today, it's like Russian roulette. Students don't try a pill. It's a high risk now. The DEA came out with a memo, and I'll just read a little bit of it for you. And if anybody is interested in this, on the sheet that I handed out, there's an email address on there. And if you'll email me, I'll send you a copy of this DEA warning. And it's I'll just highlight a couple of points of it, okay? It says, illicit fentanyl, a synthetic opioid found in almost most of the fake pills that were seized, they seized a bunch of them, is the primary driver of the recent increase in U.S. overdose deaths. It goes on that one pill can kill. The department will continue to use all of its resources at its disposal to save lives, complementing strong enforcement efforts with public awareness and outreach campaigns as well. The fentanyl-laced pills seized by the DEA today could potentially kill more than 700,000 Americans. I urge the American public to talk to their loved ones about the threats and the dangers of these fake pills and the simple fact that one pill can kill. And they close with, they call a public safety alert, okay? On September 27th, and we can get a copy of this. It's got a lot more good information in it, okay? Warning the American public about the increasing availability of fake pills, and they are more deadly than ever before. And they're easy to purchase, widely available. You can get them on social media, okay? They often contain deadly doses of fentanyl. The DA launched a campaign called One Pill Can Kill. Me and a bunch of advocates framed it that way months ago. The DA kind of followed our lead on that, and now they've declared it One Pill Can Kill campaign. The American public, the dangers of fake prescription pills. The only safe medications are the ones prescribed by a trusted medical professional and dispensed by a licensed pharmacist. Any pills that do not meet this standard are unsafe and potentially deadly, which is the same message that I delivered to students in that school. So, what else am I doing right now? Okay, and there's another thing I think would be a good thing that everybody ought to try to look this up. And again, if you go to my site and you send me an email, I can send you a link to this. There's a 22-minute YouTube film out there right now called Dead on Arrival. It is a fabulous film. You really have to watch it. I can't describe it. But I'll send you an email link if you send that to me. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm making public service announcements concerning the drug crisis with St. Tammany. I got together with the superintendent here, and they got the video people, and they recorded me, and we're going to send a message out to all the public schools, and we'll share with all schools, and also Catholic and private schools, if they'll take it. We're also going to try to do one from St. Philip Neri, where we had a town hall last week. Now I'm trying anything. You know, you throw a lot of crap against the wall. You know, I was persistent. You know, the documentary doesn't show the things that I did that I failed in, but you know, you gotta, you know, the guy that hits the most home runs is the guy that strikes out the most. Okay, so I personally reached out to Morris Bowman, okay, asking him to help us make this message common knowledge. Everybody, when they think of Morris Bowman, what do they think? One call, that's all. How about one pill? That's all it takes to kill. And how about Morris Bud putting a little piece of that in his advertisement some kind of way, or some little percentage of his budget? And look, he's a businessman. He does almost nothing for nothing, okay? What would Greg P. would that be? He can save kids' lives, and he can get this message where every kid is aware of that, every parent is aware of that. So I'm giving it a shot. He hasn't turned me down yet. He's got his advertising department looking into it, okay? We also going to work on getting government funds, okay? Anywhere we can, maybe some of that opiate money, settlement money, maybe, okay? And we're also going to reach out to corporations. One of the ones that I'm going to talk to a good friend, Chevron in this area, okay? And Ashna Hospital and some of these people. We need a campaign where everybody in the world knows about this one pill can kill, okay? It's all about, and I'm going to close with this, all of this effort that I do and then everybody else that speaks up here tonight, okay? It's about saving our children and our grandchildren. We're losing a generation. Help us. Thank you.
Hi, next I asked Cole to speak. He's actually a Long Branch alumni. And I asked him because he's 23 and he is almost 2 years sober now. And I just think in the environment we live in Southeast Louisiana, sometimes our children, you know, well, what do you mean not drink? What do you mean not, it's New Orleans. It just goes to show you that you can live a fun and wonderful life, sober, without using drugs or alcohol. So Cole has offered to tell some of his story.
Cool. Hi, how's everyone doing tonight? My name's Cole. I am 23, and addiction started for me at a pretty young age. When I was 16, I got into a minor accident. I hurt my arm or back or something. It was so minor I don't even remember what it was, but I complained to my doctor that I needed some kind of relief, and he willingly gave me gave me a prescription for opiates, and it turned into a daily prescription of pretty high dose when I was 16 years old, up until when I was around 18. He continued to give it to me until one day I went in for a typical refill, and he just said one day, can't do that. And that was pretty much the start of the end. And whenever it went downhill for me, I started buying pills off the street and using pretty much anything I could get my hands on. And after that, it escalated from just buying prescription opiates and oxys and hydrocodone and Percocet, whatever kind of that stuff. I escalated into using heroin daily, and for about 4 to 5 months, whenever I turned 20, I started using heroin, and within 3-4 months, my life was completely upside down. I couldn't function without it. It completely tore my life apart. I just was selling all my belongings. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even work. It was miserable. It was just no way to live. And it wasn't long before a couple of close friends kind of figured out what was going on, and they reached out to my family, and I got in touch with the wonderful people at Long Branch, and they truly saved my life. And I get choked up, talking about it right now, but just set a couple months of my life aside and go get some help, and it can really change your life. And after that, it's you get back to living a normal life and having real connection with people and actually living and not just surviving every day like a zombie. And I can barely remember whenever I was in addiction. I was just using people to get whatever I wanted, and it was just horrible. And after 3-4 months of getting clean, it really changed your life. And after that, COVID hit and kind of changed everything, and really kind of went inside. But it was a scary time to be in recovery at that time. When COVID and the lockdowns happened, there was no meetings, there was nothing really going on. But through some determination, everybody seems to have made it through. There's a lot of good communities around here, a lot of good meetings. Long Branch is one of the best facilities in the world, I'd say. Truly saved my life, and again, a lot of good people around here. And I just want to thank everybody else for letting me come and tell my story tonight. And that's about all I have to say.
Next person I would like to introduce is Tanya Stewart. She is a friend and actually helped me in my recovery, but she has recently opened a female adolescent program in Baton Rouge. She's going to tell you a little bit about that program.
I'm used to standing still, so I'll just take this. Real quick. I opened up a treatment facility, so I've got roller skates on nowadays. So my name is Tanya Stewart. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, addictions counselor. I'm originally from New Orleans and migrated to Baton Rouge. And I've been in the field a little over 20 years, started in adolescence and decided to finish my career in adolescence. And I really feel like I'm an addictions counselor, that I want to make a difference, but this time I want to make a difference early on, because I don't want to treat, I treat adults and I look and go, man, if someone who could have seen the signs before, how this person's life would have changed. Now, I barely get the addict nowadays. I usually just get the family members, right? Because the addict's on the street doing their thing. Hey. Hi. They're out doing their thing, and then what they're doing is causing the family a lot of stress. And the family's like, what do? I can't save them. I don't know how to help them. And I never really get the addict. So I started working with the families. I love the family work. I see the hurt and the pain that they have, and that's what motivates me to work hard. I'm going to make it real simple for you guys in the sense of what to look for. So you might have kids, grandparents, neighbors, friends of adolescents, but the way that it starts usually, and again, I have an intensive outpatient program in a girls' home residential, is that most kids that are using, they're not addicted, they're not physically dependent. What they usually start is with a mental health, so anxiety, depression, struggling with school. I feel like in adolescent years, connection is the most important thing, right? And when they can't connect to something healthy, they usually connect to something that's not healthy. That's a negative peer group, substance use, something like that. So when the kids can't connect and they start to kind of venture out into unhealthy choices, puts them in people, places, things that really are not beneficial to them, and things can get out of hand pretty quickly, especially if there's predisposition. So what's predisposition? Family history of substance use. Maybe the environment supports substance use at a young age. And so the other thing, other than predisposition, is just the environment and peer pressure, boredom, social media. Back in the day, we didn't have all this access to trying these drugs and making up your own concoctions. And now these kids are just willing to do anything and everything. And they don't feel like they're going to have any kind of fatal consequences, but unfortunately, it does end up in that. And so these kids have that mentality, it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me. And I don't think we can say that anymore, because it's happening to somebody that we know, family members, neighbors, kids, schools that we hear. So with with the mental health at an early age, I urge parents, grandparents, friends, and family to really try to seek some help. Be proactive than reactive. I would start with the school counselor first. Let the school counselor say, hey, these are some things that I'm seeing. What is the school seeing? Maybe they're saying that they're sitting by themselves at lunch. Maybe they're not talking. Maybe the grades are bad, sleeping in class. So gather your information, and then the school counselor has some people in the community that they know. And so what they would do is they'll probably match you with somebody. Just because they need to talk to somebody doesn't mean they need to be on meds, they need to go weekly, they need to go inpatient. It's just a conversation with somebody that's not a parent, somebody that they're not emotionally attached to, okay? And then if we can get ahead of the mental health stuff, the depression and anxiety, then maybe it doesn't lead to unhealthy coping. So what I see right now, we have an intensive outpatient program in Baton Rouge. We have doubled the families that we've seen in August in the last year. So we've treated over 120 families. And these families, the adolescents are cutting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with self-harm. They cut their skin, they cut in between their legs, they cut in between their toes, and it's to release pain. And not only are they self-harming with that, they're hitting themselves, they're banging their heads, they're really trying to find some relief. A lot of people don't understand the cutting, and I can tell you what I've noticed now, I see it more in males now than I do females. And I've never saw that before. Boys were more aggressive, and the girls were more internal, and they would cut. Now the boys are cutting. And so the self-harm, once you see that, and if you see any scars or cutting or bruises, just ask them about it. Don't accuse them, but say, I noticed that there's something on your arm. Tell me about that, what happened? And if it's something that increases or something that you're concerned about, definitely reach out to your pediatrician, and then you need a counselor. That counselor should be experienced enough to say, hey, this is something that needs medical attention, maybe an antidepressant, maybe something to help the anxiety. Maybe they're perfectionists, okay? People who thrive to really do great grades and be popular, and they're just not cutting it. We have eating disorder, a lot with girls, but also with boys. They restrict and they purge. And so they're hurting. I don't think any of the kids choose to cope this way, but if they don't feel like they have the support or an outlet, they're gonna try to figure it out themselves. And they'll teach you how to cut online. I mean, there are websites that teach kids how to release pain through unhealthy coping. So with substance abuse, I have 3 boys. They're all adults now, but when they started in high school, I drug tested them come 9th grade. It was just protocol in my house. I saw what it does, what drugs and alcohols can do to a kid, and so I started with my oldest, and then everybody kind of fell in line with that. I have an example of a drug screen. Parents nowadays, they don't really want to drug screen the kids. They don't feel like they trust me. They want to be their friend. They don't really want to deal with consequences. The problem with that is, I tell them, if you kids don't like you till you're 26, you're probably doing a good job. And they're not supposed to be your friend. You're supposed to set those boundaries, because they can't make that discern about limits and what's good for them. So sometimes you almost got to protect themselves, from themselves. So I'm going to pass this around, but you can get them on Amazon, you can get them at Walgreens, and they're quick read cups. So when they put their sample in here, you can pull the tab back, and it'll tell you if it's clean or dirty by the amount of lines. So I'll just go ahead and pass that. You can get them at Walgreens, you can get them at Amazon. The problem with these are that the threshold is really high. So if they used a while ago, sometimes it won't pick it up. So if they've used recently, usually it does pick up. My oldest was a little different. I drug tested him okay. The middle one really didn't have to drug test as much. This last one, it's like weekly, And I would even put it on the counter, so when his friends came, they knew this was the house not to play around in. But I tell, the biggest reward as a parent is my sons now say, I might drug test my kids when they get older. And so I feel like I've done my job. Now, I'm not saying they didn't do drugs or alcohol or try some things, but it was something that they can say, hey, Mom, or hey friend, because they go to Catholic High in Baton Rouge, and I'm one of the substance abuse counselors there, and they're like, my mom's gonna drug test me, and she said she'll call everybody in my house. I mean, everybody in my phone. And that was just an excuse that he can say, I can't do that tonight. Somebody else is doing it. So whatever it takes for him to get out of that opportunity to experiment or abuse, I was able to take the fall for that. So, let me just make sure. So what parents can do, you can drug screen, random drug screen. You can talk to the school counselor. You can open up conversation with your adolescent. And when I say conversation is, don't go in there and rescue these conversations. Don't go in there and tell them, well, you should be doing that, you should be doing that. We're all fixers as parents. We're all fixers. But I always tell parents, ask 2 questions when your kids come to you. Are you telling me this because you want my feedback? Or are you telling me this because you want me to listen? And if it's to listen, zip it. Don't say anything. Let them talk, because that is where you're going to find out things. That is where you're going to build that connection so that they don't connect to something unhealthy. So, and it's hard, because when you ask your kids how they're doing today, what do you get? Good? Okay. I don't know. Fine. Right. And then we don't know what to say, so then we start probing and probing and probing, and then they get aggravated and they go in their room and you don't see them, right? So there's got to be a different way of connecting with them, and sometimes you got to get on their level, and you've got to play a video game with them. You've got to go somewhere where they like. Walk into their world and let them know that you do care, because that really is one of the biggest things that I think will help with decreasing substance use. And the other thing is that there are 2 pillars of my programs. It's respect and accountability. Respect for yourself, respect for others, but owning your problem. With dealing with addiction, what I find, even as adults, it's never their fault. You know, they might miss a job or lose a job over and over again, but it's not my fault. I was late for work, but so is everybody else. Why did he fire me? It's not my fault. So as adolescents, it's normal to have that lack of accountability, but that doesn't mean we accept it. We still try to get them to own their issue. So my line that I would tell parents when they come in, they said, I don't want to kick them out. And the adult is like 25, 40. I don't want to kick them out the house. And they'll say, because if I kick them out the house, then they're going to use drugs and overdose. I've had family members where they overdose in the house. So that is a false sense of security. And not only that, if you say you can live with me, but I need you to stay drug-free, get a job, and clean your room, or for example, and they choose to use drugs, you are not kicking them out, they are choosing not to be with you. That is the ownership, right? So it takes that guilt off the family can kind of start taking care of themselves, and that person who's struggling with addiction can start living life and taking accountability and owning their decisions. Okay, so I think, I had like 10 minutes, right? Okay, so, and then also everything's run by insurance, unfortunately, with managed care. If you need some resources, there's a website called Psychology Today that you can Google, and you can put in your area code, and it tells you a little bit about the counselor, what insurance they take. You can just go to your school counselor. You can talk to friends. I can guarantee you, friends and family have been in counseling before, and they just haven't told you, but maybe they have a good counselor that they can recommend. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And I will tell you too, just personally as a mom, you know, my daughter is very open about this. I'm very open about my recovery. They go to meetings with me. They know all my sober friends, and I'll get into it a little bit. During COVID, my 20-year-old came to us and basically said, I'm not using substances, and I don't have a plan, but Mom, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I wouldn't care. So, you know, we had to send her somewhere for inpatient mental health treatment. So luckily, I think, well, not luckily, I give God credit that, you know, them seeing me recover and what I went through, she reached out, and we were able to get her help for her mental health before substances became an issue. But that, like Tanya said, it's not always the case. We don't know, we can't, I wouldn't have known it. Had she not come to me, I would not have known that she was that depressed or that anxious, or she was at LSU in an apartment going to school. I wouldn't have known. And I'm somebody who lives and breathes recovery and treatment, so just, it's out there, so thank you for talking about that. Holland Counts, who is our director of business, is going to talk a little bit about what treatment looks like. He's going to talk about Long Branch, but kind of explain to y'all what treatment looks like and when to reach out. Also, my card is out there, and I would like to say that's my cell phone. I went on my own and trained to do interventions as well, so I am always out, just as a person, volunteer my time. If you need it, if you need help, if you need someone to talk to, if you need a plan, I will help. So that's there on the table too. And then afterwards as well too, we can all stop by and get some, save some if you need. So finish it. Go ahead. Finish it out.
Save me as a closer. How about that, pharmacist? I like what Tanya did too, because now I'm not on the camera. My name is Holland. I'm the director of development or business, whatever Linda decides. And so I had a few different things I was going to talk about. At first, I was just going to wing it, and then I wrote a small dictionary of a bunch of different stuff that I was going to talk about. But oh, that's a shipping label. Anyway, I tried my best to be on point, but I still managed to lose the button. I think I've been thinking a lot about what does our community need most. Like Tanya mentioned, she talked about a lot of these really wonderful preventative actions. Dan is doing some unbelievable work on some pretty macro levels, but also getting to the kids before the initiation of a lot of the substance use. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about the problem now and what we can do about it, but also where I think the big gap is in our understanding and appreciation of how serious this problem is. And it may get interactive, but I have a few of the stats just to make everyone go, oh my God. But so Louisiana saw 44% more overdose deaths in 2020 than in 2019, for a total of 1,769 lives lost from the Department of Health. St. Tammany Parish saw 126 deaths, a 35% increase in 2020. If you didn't know, COVID is really, really bad for addiction and mental health. For Long Branch, that means business is very good, but obviously it's a horrible situation for anyone who has a substance use or mental health issue. Whether it's the economic consequences of losing your job, whether it's just the isolation of being home, our call volume, our census have all doubled, if not more, since the start of this thing in March 2020 or so. And so it's something to be really mindful of when you have loved ones who have something like this. We kind of touched on the fentanyl issue, which, I think what's important there to though kind of mention is, while it started as a pharmaceutical issue, it is now well out of that realm and is very difficult to control. So policy and things like that are not going to be terribly effective right now, because this is being mass produced, primarily in China and some Mexican labs, and then usually brought through Mexico, and it is incredibly cheap and easy to make. And just like Dan mentioned, it can be put in anything. So one of the unique perspectives I think I have is that I've been in recovery for 12 years myself. At 20 years old, from 15 is kind of the first time it was alcohol and cannabis. And at 20 years old, I was in a medical detox for heroin. And I haven't had a drink or a drug since that date, in January of 2009. And, but I was very fortunate, and a few things went very well for me, and primarily it was treatment. When I said I need help, my mom was she knew where to take me. And to me, that's actually the exact issue, is if someone came to you right now and said, hey, Bob needs to go to treatment, what do you do? Anyway, that's not rhetorical. Well, yeah, that's a great answer, but seriously, okay, Long Branch doesn't accept your insurance policy. You don't have insurance. Research now and have the numbers ready. That's a good answer.
I
Linda?
think just being aware of what's in your community and, you know, like discussing it with your children and your family, that this is out there. Like, don't make it like some secret or, you know, 'cause sometimes in families they have issues, like Tanya was saying with the family work, but just bringing it to their attention, I think is the biggest thing, you know.
Double check your current insurance policy for what it covers, and if it covers more than detox versus longer term.
Very good answer. I'm a provisionally licensed professional counselor. I've been kind of the director of admissions for Long Branch since we took our first client in January of 2018 until turned over last month to the incredible Tavi. But for that entire period, I've just answered the phone from people in our community looking for help. And what became like abundantly clear to me early on was, in order for me to actually be of service to this community, to both the people calling and, you know, for a company, I had to understand and know what was available, what was out there, and was shocked at how unbelievably complicated it is. Whether it is how insurance is structured, right? You may only have 1 or 2 levels of care covered, nothing else. Even certain places will only accept certain types of Medicaid. What does your policy cover? Is it subject to your deductible? Is it an out-of-network policy with the facility you're looking at? And then from there, it's also, well, what type of treatment should you look for? Do they need to go away and stay at a facility for 90 days? Should they go to an outpatient? Should they just see a therapist? Do they just need some physician-managed care from, an addiction medicine physician? It's ridiculously complicated for someone who doesn't, I still don't get it, and I've been doing it for 5 years or whatever now. And it's for the general public to have all that information, it's just incredibly difficult and hard. So yeah, it's important to let people guide you, but it is also important to know what you would do when your son or child says, I need help. What does your policy cover? And the thing that I kind of, in researching some of this, found kind of surprising is that policymakers and especially in St. Tammany, have done a really wonderful job with creating resources and making them available. Whether it's the criminal justice system, whether it's providing treatment. I was reading about Dan. He did some amazing work with the firehouses, where you could go and pick up naloxone. But it still requires you guys to understand it and know it. And then when your son or daughter says, I want help, or I need help, or you've learned that they need help, what are you going to do? What's appropriate? Should they go out of state? Should they stay local? What about their employer? What if they know? Do they know? Or do you know? And so that's a really complicated process. And I'm not going to explain it right now because it's just, I deserve 30 minutes, but I don't have that. So it is incumbent on you to kind of learn about a lot of these things. And one of the big things that, like Linda, I really applaud you on with your daughters and everything is the destigmatizing of addiction. And that's been a pretty popular topic recently, but are you comfortable giving your son or daughter naloxone to carry with them for their friends? Or do you have is addiction, are you comfortable enough in a conversational tone to be able to discuss all of these things that we're talking about? Words like heroin, words like overdose, words like, you know, I can't stop, and have a controlled and, you know, measured disposition, right? It's very, very difficult. But one of the big important issues here is that it is a medical condition, like we discussed. Just like, you know, diabetes, right? There's a bunch of interventions and they're longer term treatments and they're effective. Medications, therapies, you know, you change your diet, you should take insulin, you should continue with follow-up care. And that's the exact same thing. And so I'll do a brief little 101 on levels of care and what I guess treatment looks like for many. But, you know, the framework is always what insurance will and won't cover. And the highest level of care they typically cover is what most would consider medical detox. So that is going into a facility that sometimes only does the short-term medical detox, or it's a facility you stay at that does the full medical detox as a part of it. And the primary deal there is just managing the withdrawal symptoms and the safe medical oversight during getting off of alcohol and drugs. After that, you have residential treatment, right? So you go live and stay for somewhere between, you know, 2 weeks to 90 days. After that, there's a level of care called partial hospitalization. It's kind of like a day program where you're getting coverage to go to therapy throughout the day. Sometimes you'll opt to still stay at the facility. Other times, you know, you may go home. And then after that, there's intensive outpatient. So like Tanya was mentioning, she's got one in Baton Rouge. Generally, they're structured where you either go during the day or at night for 3 to 5 groups a week. And there's a physician that's managing care and all of that. After that, you know, maybe you go see a therapist once a week, or you see the physician or nurse practitioner for a little bit. And so a lot of people start at the very top, detox, and then go through that whole continuum of care, which outcomes are generally much better for, based on the research. But other times, you know, if you can't just leave work and you're not going to have these physiological, you know, complicated withdrawal symptoms from getting off, you could do intensive outpatient. You know, does everyone know that? Raise your hand if you knew about all those levels of care. Okay, that's too many. That doesn't prove my point. You guys work in addiction. Yeah, and then, you know, like the insurance part makes it just a lot more complicated, but it's also, I think, really important to think about, you know, like the family. So Long Branch's kind of motto is treating the mind, body, spirit, and family, right? And the idea is like this really holistic approach to treating someone, both the individual and everything that's involved with them, but also within their family system, because without treating the family, it's a really difficult and complicated process to have everyone get well. I think about it the same way with kind of policy and with the more macro stuff where it's prevention, talking to the kids and making sure that we are giving them the information that they need, right? One pill, that'll kill. A little bit shorter. That's a really powerful move, because I see it every single day. We're getting the calls where the high schooler who used to just go and experiment with a pharmaceutical pill or two, whether it's benzodiazepines, right, like you know, Xanax and Valium and stuff, fentanyl, roxicodone, right, and half the time now they even know, they're just like, it's fentanyl, right, which is far more addictive, you know, and short acting, which just exacerbates this entire problem in terms of withdrawal symptoms, in terms of needing more, you know, ecstasy, it's in everything. And then and it's impossible to legislate too, because all you have to do is not put one chemical in it or add some baking soda in it. It's a new compound that you can no longer legislate. And so that information and being able to, I think, talk really conversationally and destigmatize it as a medical condition, as you would say, hey, have you been checking your blood sugar? Have you gone to your follow-up? Is a big part of this, because these conversations are incredibly difficult and hard. But knowing what's available, knowing who you would call, but also just understanding this thing as a medical condition is really helpful, right? We have a lot of medications that will save people's lives. You know, we have some beautiful therapies that can make unbelievable progress for people. but it's a holistic thing that requires everyone, which includes resources for families and everything like that. I'm probably out of time, right? Oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, so, yeah, one of the things I did want to touch on real quick, though, is some of the resources that are available. Maybe I'll put like a nice little sheet together and stuff, but there, obviously there's facilities like Long Branch, and then there's intensive outpatient programs. We have a lot, and they're good ones. We have some detox facilities. We have, a variety of all those levels of care I mentioned are available in our community. Now they're often subject to, what insurance policies they do and don't take, but St. Tammany's done some really beautiful things for people who are totally uninsured, which is I think like 8% of the population, which is actually pretty good for like averages, but, Operation Angel. Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, everyone raised it. Safe Haven, Florida Parachutes Human Services did this for us. They have wonderful clinicians and levels of care that they're offering, things like the crisis intervention team, which are kind of totally aimed at, instead of, when you have a substance abuse or mental health issue, having the police come out who are kind of more trained or to deal with criminal activities. The crisis intervention teams are specially trained in dealing with people with having a psychotic episode, right? Having a mental health breakdown, having an overdose. And so it's framed much differently. And then I mentioned the fire station distribution that Dan was a part of, and some of the really cool things even happening at the 22nd Judicial Courts with drug court and sobriety court and stuff like that. And so I guess like my too long didn't read is it requires some self-education, or at least knowing where to go to find the people who have some of the answers. Because it unfortunately is overly complicated. It unfortunately isn't easy, but appreciating addiction as a medical condition that has the same kind of relapse rate as other conditions, that has the same type of recovery rates as other chronic conditions is, I think, a helpful way for us to destigmatize it more and start to have those conversations that are impactful. But to be clear, this is the solution. Like every one of you sitting here are a part of the solution. It is the members of the community who want to educate themselves, who want to learn about the different things that are available, that are just curious and that are willing to listen. So applaud yourselves. Whatever brought you here, you're a big part of the solution. So it was really cool to be able to speak with, Cole and Tanya and Dan. This was neat. And I appreciate all that you guys do. It's a really big deal. So that's it.
Thank you.